Hey everybody, and welcome to the first place Yu-Gi-Oh! Day deck profile. So I took Paleozoic Frog to my locals and won this beautiful Dragon Maid mat from Mystic Fighters. So it's actually a beautiful mat. I'll have you guys take a look at it real quick. So there was only 3 rounds, and I ended up going 3-0, winning with a XO record. I 2-0'd everyone. My matchups weren't very crazy or anything like that. I do want to have a quick disclaimer that this deck profile is not regional ready. I do not have all the cards that I need for it. In fact, a lot of them are coming in the mail. I wanted them to arrive on the Saturday of the event, but it actually didn't happen. Well, actually, one of them did arrive on the Saturday, but it was while I was at the store. So, fortunately, I did not happen to play it in my deck profile. So I do want to mention that a lot of the decks that I played against were basically rogue decks, tier 2, maybe at highest if you count heroes as tier 2. But yeah, there's not really much else to say other than that. This deck is not, this is more tailored to my locals, specifically towards like combo decks. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get into my list. So I played 3 copies of Swap Frog. This is their Armageddon Knights. It also can have you bounce it back to hand, and you can normal summon a frog monster from your hand, not including itself, obviously. And yeah, so the card that you do normal summon off of its effect is Dupe Frog, which we do play 3 copies of as well. And we do play 2 copies of Ronin Totem. So these 8 frogs are the entire frog engine that I play. I was messing around a little bit with Flip Flop Frog, but unfortunately it's not very strong. And I'd rather have a trap card over Flip Flop Frog. Because Flip Flop Frogs, if you don't know, is a sort of compulsory evacuation device. It's similar to it. I believe it doesn't target as well, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I'd rather honestly have a sort of trap card than, play literal compulses over playing Flip Flop Frog. Even though it's pretty good against like the Thunder Dragon matchup, I still think that these 8 frogs are the, basically the whole reason I won. In a, roundabout way. And then the next card that we played is 2 copies of Lilith. This is a fantastic card. I was originally thinking that this card wasn't that great, and I ended up trying it out. I'm not sure if there's a glare right there, so I moved them, sorry. Anyways, so I wasn't exactly sure about these originally, but I think that it's a fantastic card because it tutors out any trap card from your deck. It's not quite as good as Trap Trick because it does take up your normal summon, and it does, it's kind of like a random chance that you do get it, although you can, reveal 2 copies of the card in your deck and then a copy of Trap Trick, so, in a roundabout way you do get to that card still. So, this in tandem with Trap Trick is fantastic. But, yeah, it's just fantastic. Every time I summoned this card, I was just, always going for the card that I needed for the matchup, and I thought that it was just fantastic. It probably won me more games than I could, think of off the top of my head, but, I think that it was, just a great card overall. Next, I played 2 copies of Eater of Millions. I didn't see this card, but I think that is a fantastic card, and I still want to play it, because I really want to use this card and just see how fantastic it really is. Next thing that we played is some hand traps. So we played 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, 2 copies of DD Crow, and 1 copy of Ghost Ogre. So these ratios do seem a little bit weird. It is because I am missing the 3rd copy of DD Crow. I only own 2 copies of DD Crow. And then the one Ghost Ogre is just the replacement of DD Crow. I did think that Ghost Ogre was the next best card for my deck, so that is why I am playing the Ghost Ogre, or against my local meta. These were just more of a quick, last minute choice, I guess, for my locals, because I did think that these cards were fantastic. I ended up hitting the DD Crow, DD Crow hitting cards if they target it with Monster Reborn, or I guess World Legacy Guard Dragon in the case of the Blue Eyes decks. And in the case of Heroes, I ended up just hitting the Mali out of Graveyard, and it was fantastic. Mali back to 2. Pretty much that's what that card was. Next, we go into trap cards. So the normal trap cards, we played 3 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. So this is the only... Actually, there's one more. this card is just fantastic. There is not really much else to say about it. When this card originally came off the ban list, it wasn't that great, but now that we're playing in like a Orcust, like Thunder Dragon deck, or like, you know, meta, this is fantastic because you can just bounce the cards back to the extra deck, and then they, you know, they're fine. Blue Eyes player actually ended up summoning Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon on me, ended up just shuffling this right back into the deck. You know, if this card didn't exist there, he would have ended up attacking over my Dupe Frog and my Toad, so that would have been unfortunate, but I did have the out, so I thought it was fantastic. Oops. Alright, moving on to actual Paleo cards. 3 copies of Paleozoic Dynamistress and 3 copies of Canadia. So if you don't know, this one is the Dragon Buster or Karma Cut. Discard a card and banish a card on the field. It's not cost. You have to remember that. This is not cost to discard. It's only cost to target. Well, I guess this is more of like an activation requirement than a cost, but you know. Yeah, I think that it's just fantastic because you can you know, just banish a lot of threats, and it's great. It's really great, actually, if you ended up drawing 2 copies of Dynamistress, or like a Dynamistress and a Trap Trick, because you can Trap Trick into the Dynamistress, and then you can go ahead and use Dynamistress to discard itself. Then you have 2 Paleos set in grave. You can activate 2 traps, and then you have Toad set up for next turn, which I think is fantastic. So these cards are great. Paleozoic Canadia is honestly super underwhelming. It's not super great against the Thunder Dragon deck or the Sky Striker deck because, you know, target Colossus set it face down. That's not going to do anything. Target Ray's just going to tag out into Sky Striker Link, and obviously you can't target the Sky Striker Links for, you know, Paleozoic Canadia. So obviously this is not great against Striker, and it's not really that great against Thunder Dragon because you can also fuse with face down monsters. Who knew? Next up, for the last Paleo card we played, is 2 copies of Olenoides. So, like I said before, my locals is made up of mostly combo decks. So usually, if I'm going to use this card, it's going to be on one like specific card in their deck, which is why I only play 2. If I, you know, draw the Trap Trick for it, I can set it out of my deck and then just use it on the one card that they're going to use. For example, if they play a copy of World Legacy Guard Dragon, I can just go ahead and Olenoides and hit it, which is not very great because they're, if I like, you know, Trap Tricks at it, they get the monster still. But regardless, it's not that great against like Blue Eyes, so I usually just side this out in general. Against heroes, they use, I believe, Increase Ferris to set increase or activate Increase from deck, right? Then you can chain Trap Trick to go ahead and set the Olenoides. Then when they go ahead and use Increase's effect to tribute as cost, you can chain Olenoides to destroy it. So yeah, that's pretty much the only thing with Olenoides. So that's the only really use for it in my locals right now. Obviously, if you're playing more combo decks with more back row, you're going to want to play more copies of it. Or just play copies of Heavy Storm Duster, which I actually cut from my deck list entirely. So the next card that we play is 2 copies of Lost Wind, and obviously 3 Trap Trick to set all of our normal trap cards, which was every trap card that I've gone through so far. So yeah. Lost Winds were fantastic as well, just being able to negate stuff. It's pretty great. We played a copy of Imperial Order and 3 copies of Crackdown to round out our trap cards. These are continuous trap cards, so obviously non-settable by the effects of Trap Trick or Lilith. So do keep that in mind. These are not searchable. Which is why I do max out on the Crackdown, because I do want to see it more often than most of my normal trap cards. But yeah, next we played 2 spells. So 1 copy of Scapegoat and 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Scapegoat's fantastic. It won me a game all by itself. Literally, like, I did not draw... Okay, I drew 1 Paleo card, and so obviously not enough to get into Toad. And I drew, like, tons of traps. And Scapegoat by itself won me the whole game. Like, it was just fantastic. I believe the other trap cards I had set were maybe like a Crackdown, I think like a Lost Wind, and a Compulse, and then like a, Scapegoat. And Scapegoat by itself won me that entire game, pretty much. So yeah. Next, we played 3 copies of Toad. and it's 1 copy of Anomalakars and 1 copy of Opabina. These cards didn't come up today. I wish they did, but they ended up, just not coming in, which is fine. It happens. Anomalakars is fantastic against Altergeist. I wouldn't change it. I think this extra deck is honestly pretty perfect. And the last card we played was Dingirsu. Obviously with Crackdown, if you take Galatea, you can turn it into Dingirsu. If you take 2 level 8s, if you have 2 Crackdown set, you can hard make Dingirsu, which is also fantastic. Next up, we played 1 copy of Link Kariba, 1 copy of Link Spider, and 1 copy of Security Dragon. This is just for scapegoat stuff. Honestly, the Link Spider is pretty fantastic. Even I would consider playing it even if I didn't play Scapegoat, because this card does, by its own, you can use like Paleo cards to turn into Link Spider, so it's an effect monster, so you can make like Borreload, or sorry, not Borreload, Borrelsword, or like Avermax. So I think that that's fantastic. Wouldn't change those. Next up, we played Mistar Boy, Nightmare Phoenix, and Nightmare Cerberus. All fantastic cards, just Link 2s that we work our way up into our Link 4s, which I will get to in just a second. But yeah, drawing a card off of Nightmare Phoenix or Cerberus is fantastic. A lot of the times I do just make the Security Dragon up top with the Phoenix pointing to, so I can bounce a card into the extra deck. And then you can turn these 2 into Crusadia, the Avermax. So fantastic, because you can, bounce a monster, destroy a spell or trap, and have an Avermax on field. So it's just fantastic tempo advantage, and you can just go from there, and it's pretty great. Next, the only Link 3 we play is a copy of Nightmare Unicorn. Didn't summon it. Borrelsword wins you pretty much every game that you play. And then Avermax to get into your extra, if you can't OTK with Borrelsword, you just make this. So, yep. That's it for our extra deck. I wouldn't change anything about the extra deck. Honestly, I'd change stuff about the main deck. Obviously, if I was going to regionals, like I said, this is tailored specifically to my locals. So, yeah. Next for extra deck, we played the remaining 2 copies of Ghost Ogre as well as an Eater of Millions. So this is against the hero deck so that I can Ghost Ogre increase. Because increase tributes its cost and then just ogre it. So yeah, just when I'm going second, because obviously Olenoides is not settable from it's not settable off of if you go first, or sorry, if you're forced to go second, because it's a trap card. Next we played 3 copies of Strike. This went in every single time that I was gonna go into game 1, or go first, sorry. And same thing with Judgment, because this counters evenly match, red reboot, all that sort of stuff. Every time I sided this card in, I saw multiples of it, which was fantastic. Actually, I think there was ones that I didn't see multiples, but I ended up using 2 copies of Judgment to negate 2 red reboots, and it was great. So, yeah, pretty good stuff there. I definitely would not change the Solemn Judgments out at all. Next, 6 cards that we didn't play to round out our side deck. 3 copies of Stormduster and 3 copies of Nibiru. So these are just for control decks, which if someone randomly showed up with Altergeist or something, I wouldn't auto lose to them, so I just hide in the Dusters. Same thing with Nibiru. These were if I was forced to go second, which fortunately I didn't ever side them in for that case against the hero player that I went against, which is what I would have sided them in for. So these didn't see any play today. I would still keep them in, and yeah, I'm definitely going to switch out some ratios. Honestly, I think that these Lost Winds and I think the Upstart should be infinite impermanences. You can obviously mess around with the ratios yourself if you want, but this is just the deck profile I took. So yeah, I do have a theory that I should kind of consider going over. Maybe I'll do it in a different video with Trap Trick and 2 ofs. A lot of people might disagree with it, but I think that it is a very, very smart theory, and it should take some consideration into. Anyways, that's it for the deck profile, so I will see you guys in a couple weeks when I hopefully top a regional with this deck. Yep, see ya.